Welcome everyone to a brand new what if story, which is what if Naruto was member of rias peerage and ate devil fruit part 1. I hope you like it. Summary says, Naruto was teleported in world of DxD. After battle between Sasuke and Naruto and ate devil fruit and killed by freed and become a member of rias peerage. How will Naruto was take it that he was no longer a human but a devil and bound with rias as a sir.
Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto or High School DxD, as those are owned by Masashi Kishimoto and Ichie Ishibumi, respectively.
If you guys like this video, then don't forget to click the like, but our goal is 100 views. I hope you complete the goal, so without wasting any time, let's begin our story.
Chapter 1. The legend begins. If one were to wander around the woods of Kyoto, Japan right now, they would not see the trees of the forest. No, all they would see would be a bunch of trees that spanned for great distances until they were annoyed. However, this was not the case for one Naruto Uzumaki. For the young man, he found himself quite comfortable when he was within the heavily wooded area. It was like a second home to the amnesiac teenager. Oh, you didn't know, you say? Well, that's perfectly fine. Not everything is meant to be perfect in this world. If everything was supposed to be perfect, want and need wouldn't exist, and there would be no war or anything related to the bad things that went hand in hand with it. No, young Naruto did not feel the exasperating woes of the world when he was in his small comfort zone. In fact, one would call him an old man if they were to see him now. A perfectly tanned hand reached up into the tree and pulled the fruit off its branch and placed it safely within its basket before reaching up and grasping another one to repeat this process. The young Uzumaki was smiling peacefully as he pulled the pears off the tree and putting them within their basket until they would become full. He only did this once a week to ensure that the trees always had a steady supply. All 10 of them, all varieties of fruit, all so succulent and juicy, all so plump in their filling. When he had first discovered this small tree patch of fruit-bearing trees, he had been surprised, and he certainly didn't expect to find them with so many fruits either. Now, while you may think that young Naruto is holding the basket with both hands, the truth was he only had one hand. His right hand. You see, Naruto had lost his left arm a few months ago, around the same time he lost his memory. His left arm had been severed at just below the elbow at around halfway up his forearm, and was cauterized by an unknown means. But from what the doctors had told him, it was seared shut by the electricity of all things. That was 6 months ago. He had woken up in the hospital nearly a week after being admitted into it with wounds that should have naturally killed any mortal man if they had suffered them. However, Naruto was no mere mortal man. You see, while the young man may not have remembered who he was, besides a couple of cards with his identity, the truth was far more simple. He was actually from a different world, a different reality. He had been in a fight to end all fights with his best friend and rival, and with their finishing blows, they had torn a hole through space and time itself, which sent Naruto through the dimensional gap and into the streets of Kyoto, Japan, where he crashed into the pavement and subsequently lost all forms of his memories. When he was brought in by doctors, they were astounded by the rate he was healing from such fatal wounds. But in the end, they allowed his body to heal itself. With his basket now filled, he slowly climbed down his ladder he had found and set it down on the ground before he turned to grab his ladder to move to the next tree, beside his beloved pear tree. Up in the loving fruit tree, he had just finished harvesting from, a small fruit shook in the wind. Now this fruit was clearly different from its other brethren hanging up in the branches. It was not green like them, though it did have a much sweeter taste than them. And it certainly did not feel as normal as them as well. This fruit was a light blue pear-shaped fruit, like the others, and had a swirling design that covered the entire surface of its surface, and it had a twisted stem that was vastly different than the other fruits as well. I remember one. A small pop, and a second later the fruit fell from its branch towards the ground. It bounced off a couple of the other branches along the way, but eventually, it managed to land on the rest of the pears within the basket that had just been harvested by the young blonde. Hearing the fruit fall into the basket caused young Naruto to pause his movement as he placed his ladder back against the tree, as he looked to his fruit curiously. Seeing his fruit wasn't being disturbed, he went back to moving his ladder until he noticed the blue-tinted fruit, which once more made him place his ladder back down against the tree. Walking to the basket, he picked the unusual-looking fruit up and took a look at the strange-looking fruit. Sniffed it, and then bit into it. It was like an avalanche of flavor had filled his mouth. While it wasn't his favorite dish by far, it was a close second to the food of the gods. Swallowing the bite he had taken from the fruit, he took another, and then another. Eventually, the entire fruit, including the core, had been devoured by the Uzumaki, who sighed in content as he wiped his face free of the fruit's succulent juices, which he promptly licked off his hand. He gave another sigh as he took a deep breath. Ah man, that was so good, you know, the young man said, his verbal tick coming into play, like it usually did after he spoke sometimes. What Naruto didn't know was that he had eaten a special fruit. A fruit that had been forgotten by mankind for thousands of years. It was a test run for what would become the normal weapons for those involved in the supernatural. What Naruto had in fact eaten was a devil fruit. But this devil fruit was no ordinary devil fruit. This devil fruit was the most powerful of its class, and was no weaker than its Logia class elemental brethren. It was the paramecia-type devil fruit known as the gura gura no mai, which roughly translated to either sound of shaking, though that was highly unlikely, or to be more specific quake quake fruit, as was the correct pronunciation for the powerful fruit, from when all the others existed. With the rest of his fruit gathered, the blonde-haired blonde walked to his bicycle and loaded the fruit into a large wagon tied to the back. Naruto looked up to the sun, his twin-colored orbs of violet and blue singing in joyo. What is that? You didn't know he had two different colored eyes, you say. Yes, Naruto was indeed heterochromatic, as in he had two different colored irises, which was indeed rare in people. People, mainly the young women, commented that he had lovely eyes, while the men said they held some kind of power within them, though the young men never knew they were wrong, as it was just a normal eye. Back to the story, as he felt the light fall upon him, he then climbed onto his transportation and went home. When tomorrow came, he would take the fruit baskets up to the school for a small payment of their actual price, and would in turn pay his bills. When the dawn of the morning came, and Saul shined his light down on the world, Naruto woke up with a stretch. Well, with as much of a stretch as he could get, he was still quite hurt even now. His body may have healed, but his body still ached on occasion. Climbing out of his bed, the blonde went through his usual morning routine of brushing his teeth before showering and making a quick breakfast before he changed into his school uniform. With his routine finished, he began to load his gathered produce and place it in the wagon, before he then climbed on and made his way towards the school. He gave out a couple of fruit to a few people he knew, like his neighbors, the Hayaru family, who he usually gave a bag of 10 to, for helping him so much. Now that wasn't to say he liked their son, of course. He respected the young teen in his own right. But at school he utterly loathed the perverted teen and his two friends who made the lives of the young women of their school a living hell. While it was fun to torture Issy and the other two of his group, he still had other things he had to worry about, such as his fangirls. He didn't know how he had earned a flurry of fangirls, but he knew one thing was for certain. He did not like them, at all. They always followed him and were always asking him out on dates. While he liked girls, as any normal red-blooded man would, he didn't like the shallow girls that were always vying for his attention at school. However, there were those who never tried to get his attention, and he did interact with them on occasion. He still had to find out who started that rumor of him sleeping with two of the teachers at once. He had nearly gotten expelled for that. Currently, Naruto was in gym class at the pull-up bars. Now, normally people would make fun of a cripple with one arm, but that stopped when Naruto had ripped off his sleeves for his gym shirt and proceeded to do 175 pull-ups with his remaining arm. Now, it was unknown if Naruto worked out his left arm by the student body, or what's left of it anyway, but one couldn't help but notice that it remained just as large as its right-sided brother. One couldn't have been more correct about that assumption than they ever could have guessed. The way Naruto kept the muscles in his left arm from growing weaker was by strapping a belt to his left arm tightly at the edge of where his arm had been severed to the point he nearly passed out due to losing circulation, and then tied it to the weight he was lifting before he proceeded to do his workout. It was a very efficient method of keeping his body as close to 100% efficient as one could with a missing limb. Ah, secret workouts, how amazing they were to keep the body in shape, and making sure one never lost muscle mass due to ill use. Finishing his set of pull-ups, Naruto allowed himself to drop to the ground before he walked behind his spotter and allowed him to do his own set of pull-ups. It was a pretty normal day so far, and the perverted trio hadn't been peeping as of late, which was a shock to the female student body, as they were beaten up at least 3 times a day by them, and twice by Naruto or pranked, so something had to have been happening. The sound of the bell ringing caused a large portion of the students to sigh, as they went to change before heading to their next class sounded, and Naruto followed the crowd to the changing room. It was here he heard people speaking. Now, normally, Naruto just ignored the whispers of rumor, but this actually caught his attention. 2 new transfer students had enrolled in the school, and apparently, Issy Hyodu was dating one of them. How in the hell did that pervert manage to get a date just after meeting her? Oh well, to each their own. Walking out of the locker room, Naruto walked up the stairwell to his next class and sat in his chair. When the bell rang, the teacher, an eccentric and fun elderly old woman, around 56 years old, named Miss Williams, who moved from America to teach them, cleared her throat. All right, class, before we begin this next lesson, we have a new student to introduce. She looked to the door and waved the new student into her class. You can come in, dear, we won't bite, she told the student, who then opened the door and entered before walking up to the front of the class. Miss Williams gently placed a hand on the young woman's shoulder and continued, Class, this here is, I'm sorry, but I never did receive your name, dear, she said, looking to the young woman. The young woman gave a gentle smile. It's Karina, she introduced herself. Like all other students of the school, she wore the Quo school uniform, which consisted of a white long-sleeved, button-down shirt, short sleeves for spring-summer, with a black ribbon on her shirt collar worn under a black shoulder cape, and a matching button-down corset, a magenta skirt with white accents, and brown dress shoes over white crew-length socks. She had her navy blue hair done up in a long fishtail braid that rested over her right shoulder and reached just below her breast. All in all, she could potentially match some of the more popular girls of the school in looks alone. Which was okay in Naruto's book, as he certainly did enjoy looking at some of the girls due to their beauty, but he wouldn't perv out like the perverted trio that he liked pranking so much. Miss Williams nodded her head. Well, class, this is our new student, Karina, who will be learning with us. Say hello, she told her class, who greeted the young beauty. Karina, just find yourself a seat, and we will begin class shortly. Okay, dear, she told her student, who nodded and walked down the aisle next to Naruto, and sat at the desk next to his own. With that, the class started up as usual, and the day went on. When the bell for lunch rang, Naruto walked outside and sat underneath one of the secluded trees with his lunchbox in his lap held by his legs, and opened it with his hand. Reaching in, he grabbed one of the fruit he kept for himself and bit into the juicy fruit with a content smile. He was drawn out of his food-induced bliss when someone walked up to him and waved to him. With a wave back, he swallowed his food and greeted his new classmate. Oh, he spoke. Karina smiled softly. Hello, I'm not sure you remember me, but I just transferred here. My name is Karina. She introduced herself to the blonde. Naruto nodded his head. I remember, you were in my history, math, and science class with me, he said. Karina nodded her head. Yes, I was wondering, since you aren't eating with anyone, if you would like some company, she asked him. Naruto shrugged a shoulder. Sure, I don't mind. It actually feels nice to eat with someone for a change, the blonde said as he moved over a bit to allow the blue-haired beauty to get some shade. Karina sat next to him and opened her own lunch and begun to eat. As she did, she also took notice of his arm, the one that was missing. I couldn't help but notice you have an amputated arm. Why is that? She asked him. Naruto swallowed his meal before he looked at her with a lost look on his face. To be honest, I don't remember, he said honestly. Karina looked confused. How could you not remember losing an arm? I'm pretty sure even someone like you could remember that, she said as politely as she could. Naruto shrugged. That's the thing, I can't remember. You see, a few months ago I was in an accident. Apparently the place I was around exploded, and as I was walking past, something hit my head and I was unconscious and something landed on me, he said, using the excuse the doctors gave him when he woke up. Apparently, whatever it was that landed on me was heavy enough and packed enough weight to cut the arm off and sear the wound shut at the same time. I was told I had broken several bones as well, but I wasn't given a cast because I somehow healed so fast. I never needed one to begin with, he told her. Karina nodded her head. Amnesia, that was what he had. He had been hit hard enough that he actually didn't remember what had happened. She swallowed the part of her sandwich she had bitten off. What did your parents have to say? She asked him. Naruto once again shook his head. I don't have any parents. At least, the ones I remember at any rate, he told her. What? That can't be right. Karina gave him a confused look. Wait, they weren't there for you? She asked with a small amount of anger. Only for Naruto shook his head. Naruto continued his story. The first thing I remember was the hospital. Just some regular old hospital room in a Kyoto emergency room, he told her. What? No way, she said. Naruto nodded. Yeah, my skull was fractured by at least 60%, and I was supposed to be diagnosed as brain dead. Apparently it was unnatural to them, he said, making a quotation at the word unnatural. I guess something happened and my skull healed up faster than it should have when I woke up, he said in remembrance. Karina listened closely. It was something that had been reported to Azel when a large energy surge occurred around 6 months ago, which was when Naruto had been admitted to the hospital. Naruto snorted with a bit of dry humor. I guess that it was something in my blood because when one of the nurses went to put a needle in my arm, it broke, he said. Wait, a needle broke against his skin. That couldn't be right. Even her skin broke when she was given a shot from the doctor during her checkups. Seeing her look, nodded his head. It wasn't even an hour after that my skull and any of the other broken bones managed to heal. The doctors were astounded, he said, making another quotation movement with his hand. And after that, they wanted to know my story. Just like you, I guess, and I honestly didn't have one. I couldn't tell them. I was only able to identify myself thanks to them finding my ID cards on me when they got me there, he told her. Karina gave him a small look that showed she understood some of the pain he was going through. So, you honestly can't remember anything? She asked him. Naruto shook his head. Nah. The only thing I had in my pocket was a pack of gum, a ramen coupon to a restaurant, my ID cards and a picture of me and a couple of kids and an adult. I assume I was close to. Other than that, nothing, he told her. When I went to sign out, I nearly had a heart attack thanks to paparazzi showing up, but I managed to give them the slip with pure luck, he said with a chuckle. Karina was confused. How come I didn't hear about any of this on the news? And my dad never told me about it since he reads the newspaper. That's so strange, she said. It was a partial lie about having a father. While the guy did love reading the paper, and she saw him as a father figure in some cases, he wasn't her actual father. Naruto shrugged. I honestly wouldn't be able to tell you. But if I had to guess, they wanted to keep my accident a secret cause shortly after I was never bothered by a man with a camera again. He said. Well, that's nice, Karina said as Naruto shrugged again. Naruto nodded solemnly. Yeah, though it does make me wonder. What kind of bastard must I have been, that nobody was there to claim me? I mean, I'm not the most charming guy in the world, or so I've been told. But nobody, he said, quite visibly upset. Karina patted his arm. Hey, I'm sure there is someone out there who cares for you. You just haven't met them yet, she told Naruto softly. At the end of the day, all the students went home to do their own thing. Naruto paid his bills and the two disguised fallen angels went back to their leader with what information they had gathered. Oh, you didn't know? Yeah, both new transfer students to Quo Academy were a part of the supernatural world. Karina, known truly as Kala Warner, sat on the couch in front of the Grigori leader Azazel next to her friend Yuma, whose actual name was Rainier, who sighed as he leaned back in his seat. So, what have you girls got for me? He asked them. Rainier huffed. That little brat is so much like you. I would figure he's your son. Little pervert actually wanted to grope my breasts, she huffed. I meant about his power, his strength as he is now, not his personality. Azazel deadpanned towards the huffing woman. He's no stronger than any ordinary human being on this planet. I wouldn't be surprised if he died not ever knowing he had a sacred gear, she said. Azazel nodded his head in understanding. Some humans who were born with a sacred gear went their entire lives, without ever knowing they had one, but somehow drew on a small drop of their power. He looked to Kala Warner. And what about your target? What have you got on him? He asked her. Kala Warner shrugged. Other than being a complete amnesiac, he has potential. He doesn't even remember anything past 6 months ago. In fact, he recounted everything that happened to me. No parents, siblings, uncles, aunts, grandparents, godparents, or caretakers of any sort. Claims he must have been one hell of a bastard to everyone he knew for them not to come to check up on him in the hospital. In all honesty, I'm surprised he managed to recover as quickly as he did. Says he healed in under an hour, and even claims a needle had broken against his arm. Which should be physically impossible, as even gods can get their shots from a hospital, even though they don't actually need them. She said to her boss. He has a good head on his shoulders, is respectful, and doesn't make a big deal about his missing arm either, she said. Wait, missing arm? Rainier questioned. You're talking about that kid so many of the girls in the school are attracted to. The one who can do almost anything with just one hand, and some students claimed had a threesome with 2 of the teachers, she exclaimed with slightly red cheeks. Azazel raised a brow. Now that was interesting. The one-arm bit not sleeping with 2 of the teachers part, though that would be impressive in its own right. Azazel raised a hand before Kala Warner could speak. I think I know who you're talking about, he said, drawing their attention. Keep an eye on them and don't do anything stupid, all right? I'll have to speak with Sirzex about this, and see what he knows. After all, that school is under his sister's jurisdiction, he said, standing up. You two get some rest, and I'll see you for your next report. Good night, he said as he walked away. Good night, Azazel, both women said. For the next week, Naruto and Kala Warner would hang out at the tree they ate lunch at, and for once Kala Warner could truly say she was being drawn to the blonde. While he didn't have any stories about his past, he sure could weave a tale about how he could probably outrun anybody in the school, by a wide margin. There was even a joke that someone brought a speedometer just to see how fast he could get, but they couldn't keep up with his speed in the long run. They had even agreed to go see a movie together in the theater for one of the newer released films, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, to see how it was. And the movie is awesome as fuck. However, all good things must come to an end, as they say. It was late at night as Naruto walked through the park that would eventually take him to his home, his backpack strapped to his back, filled with his books, and a smile on his face. Today had been a rather good day for Naruto. He and Karina had spoken of some of the things they wanted to do when they got out of school, and had even agreed to go to the movies next weekend. Now, normally, from what he seemed to remember about himself, Naruto wouldn't go out on a date with someone he had just met, but he had a good feeling about Karina. Now, that wasn't to say things, of course hadn't happened, because there were things that had happened. He had been given a flyer by a cute-looking girl, and it simply read, "If you want your desires to come true, simply make a wish," which Naruto thought was funny. However, things were soon about to get awry for our blonde hero. As he was walking, Naruto couldn't help but feel he was being stalked by someone, but he simply shook the feeling off as something natural. However, when a voice suddenly spoke, the blonde couldn't help but jump in shock. Well, what do we have here? Some shitty little brat trying to go home to mommy. A very crude voice spoke. Naruto turned around and saw a man wearing what was supposed to be clerical clothing, and he had a disturbing smile on his face that made Naruto extremely nervous. Not about his life, but for his own sanity. He gave a wave. "Hello, Priest-san. It's a good evening, isn't it?" he asked him. As he didn't know the man and said man wore church clothes, he was now known as Priest-san. Freed shook his head with a disgusted look on his face. "Fuck the church. I don't want nothing to do with their shitty fucking ideals," he said. "Now what are you doing here, you shitty brat?" he demanded as he placed his hands in his pocket. Naruto raised his hand. "I apologize, but as I don't know your name, I had as..." Bang! He couldn't finish his apology, as a shot rang out through the clearing as Freed held up a gun. He looked down at his stomach and saw a river of red running down his stomach while staining his uniform. You shot me. Why did you shoot me? He asked in a confused tone. Freed grinned an insane smile. Because I wanted to. To be honest, I'm surprised you actually survived for this long with that blessed bullet in your gut. Just means I can bang you up more. Freed cackled wickedly. With that, he lifted his gun up again and shot the weapon 4 more times into the blonde, causing him to stumble back before he fell to the ground, on his knee. Pleasant death, ya shitty kid, he said before he walked away. Naruto couldn't help it, and stood up and took a step forward, ignoring his wounds as they slowly, so slow it didn't look like he was healing at all, healed themselves. You are a vile man, he declared, causing the ex-priest to stop and turn around with a shocked look on his face before it turned into a savage grin. I don't know who you think you are, but I do know that it is illegal to just randomly shoot innocent people, Naruto said as he balled his fist, not noticing as it was surrounded by a soft white glow from his new power. So do me a favor and get the hell out of here, he said as he shoved his fist into the man's gut, causing him to fly away where he crashed into a tree. While he didn't draw out the power from his devil fruit, it was easily said he had just activated it for the first time. Freed climbed back to his feet with a laugh. Oh, this is awesome. A person who can take a holy bullet and survive. Shitty people in this world can't handle more than 1, but you've tanked 5. You're pretty cool for a fucked up kid, he crowed as he raised the gun and pointed it at Naruto's heart before he pulled the trigger once again, and this time, the blonde did fall. Combined with his slowed healing factor, the fact they were holy bullets, and he had a demon sealed inside him, and the 5 shots beforehand, it was just a little too much for the blonde. And Naruto collapsed to the ground as Freed cackled before he walked away without turning back. Naruto looked up to the sky with slowly dimming eyes. Why? Why am I dying here and not in some hospital bed as an old man? I didn't even get to go out with Karina as I promised her. I want to live, if not for me, then for those that I'm close to, he thought to himself as his eyes slowly closed. As this was running through his head, he didn't notice that the pamphlet in his pocket glowed a deep crimson. A few seconds later, Rias Gremory appeared in a flash of red where she looked around before she noticed Naruto lying in a pool of his own blood. With a gasp, she ran over to him and picked his head up, causing his eyes to open weakly where he saw Rias's red hair. Huh, such beautiful red hair, he whispered out as he coughed up a glob of blood. Rias couldn't help but blush at his words as she reached into her pocket. Don't worry, Naruto-san, I won't let you die, she said as she held up a rook piece. I, Rias Gremory, command thee, Naruto Uzumaki. On my name, Rias Gremory, she intoned as she singled chess piece up before it hovered up from her hand to where it floated just above his heart. Become my servant and walk these lands as a devil, she chanted as the rook piece begun to sink into his chest, which in turn caused Naruto to glow as well. So that thee may live a new life with great joy as a member of my peerage. She finished as the glow faded away from around the blonde, who settled into a deep sleep, his wounds now fully healed from the transformation as the holy bullets vanished. She sighed as she looked at her newest peerage member. You know, even asleep you have a cute expression, she said as she stroked his whisker marks. It's such a shame you lost your arm. I would have gladly healed you if I had been there when you were hurt, she said to him. The next day, Naruto groaned as he felt the rays from the sunland on his eyes, causing him to roll to his side to try and get back to sleep. However, as if God himself said fuck you, the blonde's alarm clock went off, causing him to groan as he slammed his hand down on top of the machine, crushing it like it was paper. Sigh. Great, now he needed to replace that one as well. It seems as if he went through a dozen clocks a week now, and it wasn't his fault that he broke them when he tried to shut them off. Okay, so maybe it was his fault he couldn't help but smash them when they woke him from his amazing rest, as they annoyed the crap out of him. Like, seriously. Anyways, Naruto began his stretch before he got up, did his morning routines, and began making his way to school. While on his way, he noticed he felt more sluggish in the sun, like he was getting weaker in the sun, which was weird, cause that had never happened to him before, and he liked the sun. Though after about 5 minutes of walking, Naruto's body adjusted to the sun, so he didn't feel sluggish anymore. Naruto finally made it to the school, and as he was walking inside the gate, he heard someone calling out to him. Naruto turned to see that it was Karina, who was jogging up to him with a smile on her face and waving at. Naruto waited with a smile and said, Hey, Karina, how are you doing today? While waving his single arm back at her. Karina caught up to him and said, I'm fine, how about you, Naruto-kun? Naruto shrugged a shoulder as the two continued walking to class and said, Can't complain. Though I do feel different, and I had the strangest dream yesterday that I died. Karina was curious and a little worried and asked, What do you mean? Well, began Naruto. Yesterday, I was going home when I came across a guy dressed as a priest. Though, his sailor of a mouth clearly showed he didn't care about the church or was a man of God. Naruto suddenly winced in pain as he felt a headache for some reason. Karina looked worried, but he waved her off before continuing. Anyways, I tried talking to him when all of a sudden he pulls a gun on me and proceeded to shoot me in the stomach. Karina got worried and asked, "Are you okay? You're not hurt, are you?" Naruto looked at her strangely and said, "I'm fine, like I said, it was just a freak dream. Are you okay?" Karina blushed in embarrassment before saying, "Sorry, just kind of freaked out because I was worried. Anyways, continue what you were saying?" Naruto looked at her again with a raised eyebrow before continuing. "Anyways, after he shot me, he just began walking away. Though I didn't fall that easily as I managed to stand up before I felt this rush of energy and punched him in the face so hard, he slammed into a tree that was a couple of meters away from us." Karina was entranced in the story, and was also curious about this rush of energy Naruto spoke of as she asked, "Then, what happened?" Naruto shivered as he said, "The guy proceeded to stand up, compliment me on not dying after the first 5 shots before he proceeded to shoot me in my heart. Obviously at this point, I couldn't handle it any longer, so I fell to the ground. I was slowly bleeding out, about to die, when all of a sudden, I see this beautiful girl with stunning, red hair." When Naruto described the girl, he didn't notice how Karina seemed to gain a jealous expression for a second, before it went away as he finished. "After that, I woke up in bed this morning." Karina cleared her throat as she said, "That is a crazy dream, Naruto-kun. Maybe it means you need to relax some more, and enjoy life before you miss the chance." Naruto hummed as he said, "Maybe, but the dream felt so real, and I feel different. I just can't put my finger on it." "Maybe you're just overthinking things, Naruto-kun," Karina suggested before saying, "I think you just need to relax after all. I don't want you all stressed out on our date this weekend." Karina finished with a sly smile and a light blush, getting Naruto to blush as well. As the two were walking, Naruto suddenly felt like someone was watching him, so he turned in the direction where he saw the old school building. In the window he saw a girl staring at him. She was wearing the school uniform with the shirt looking to be tight around her D-cup breasts. She had flawless skin with blue-green eyes that were watching him with curiosity, and something else that he couldn't recognize. However, despite all of her beautiful features, the one thing that caught attention the most was her long, beautiful crimson hair that he just couldn't take his eyes off it. The two then met gazes, with him staring into her blue-green eyes and her staring into his cerulean blue eyes, and time just seemed to stop. They didn't know what happened, but when their eyes met it felt like nothing else mattered but the two of them. They didn't know how long they had been staring at each other, but to the two of them it felt like hours. The two continued to stare before Naruto was snapped out of it by Karina shaking his shoulder, garnering his attention and getting Rias to snap out of it as well. "Are you alright? You kinda zoned out on me for a second there," she asked while doing her best to keep the jealousy out of her voice. Naruto shook his head in an attempt to clear after what just happened and said, Yeah, I'm fine. I'm probably still tired or something." With that, Naruto walked to class with Karina following close behind him, neither noticing how Rias seemed to be staring at Naruto again, but with a blush on her cheeks. She was also clutching her hands to her chest where her heart resided in an attempt to calm her now rapidly beating heart. Foo. Rias's eyes suddenly widened as she jumped when she heard someone laughing behind her, and turned rapidly with her face burning even brighter with a blush. Turning around, she came face to face with another girl her age. This girl had long black hair held in a ponytail by an orange ribbon and violet-colored eyes. She wore the same uniform as Rias that also strained against her bust, which was bigger than Rias's at DD Cup. Something that oftentimes caused Rias's eyebrow to twitch in jealousy when it was brought up or emphasized. This was Akeno Himejima, Rias's friend and a queen in her peerage. "Has my king found something that interests her?" Akeno asked in a teasing manner, getting Rias to blush even more before she shook her head, clearing up most of her blush except for a bit on her cheeks, and glared at Akeno. "Don't do that, Akeno," Rias exclaimed, showing that she hadn't been expecting Akeno to suddenly sneak up on her like that. Rias then turned back to look out the window and said, "And whether I found someone interesting is none of your concern." Akeno hummed while moving closer to Rias, getting her to look at Akeno from the corner of her eye with a raised eyebrow, as Akeno said, "I never said someone now, did I, Rias Bucho?" Rias, realizing her slip-up, blushed before clearing her throat and said, "Alright, fine. Someone has indeed caught my eye. What do you know about Naruto Uzumaki?" Akeno hummed in thought before saying, "There's not much to say about him, really. Other than the regular rumors around school about him sleeping with Lucy-sensei and Urza-sensei, he is just a regular boy who lost his arm. Why do you wish to know? Number 2. Rias sighed as she explained to Akeno about what happened when she was summoned, and finding Naruto bleeding out. She then finished her explanation of the night, with how she used a rook piece on him and healed him, minus the compliments she was given. "No need to give Akeno more ammo to tease me," thought Rias, as she suffers enough with Akeno's teasing, and didn't need to give the girl something else to tease her about. Akeno looked to be in deep thought over what Rias revealed before she looked at Rias and said, "From what you've said, I think you did the right thing, as it shows that you don't help someone simply because of an ability they have. This shows that you are growing into a proper leader and oking, as you no longer look for those simply for their ability or sacred gear." Rias smiled and said, Thank you, Akeno, and you know what? You're right. Before I might have tried to manipulate Hiyato-san, if only for the fact that he has a strong sacred gear according to Kaneko, saying she smells dragons from him. But now, I think I'll try and ask him at a later point in time, if only to let him have a normal life. For a bit longer. After all, I need all the help I can get in dealing with him. Akeno could hear the malice and anger in Rias's voice when she said, him, and she knew who Rias was talking about. Akeno nodded her head before she said, I understand, Rias, and don't worry. The others and myself will do everything we can to help. Rias nodded her head before she and Akeno left the room in preparation for their class. Homaki, Class Dai. It was currently the end of the day, and Naruto could say that he has had a good day, despite the weird dream he had. He hung out with Karina, with the two of them discussing what they would do on their next date. He defended the Kendo girls from the perverted trio, and got a kiss from Murayama and Katase, much to Karina's jealousy. And finally, he got his math test back showing 100%, which greatly surprised him. All before lunch and between passing periods. Currently, it was the last class of the day, and Naruto really enjoyed Homasi with Urza-sensei. He didn't understand it, but he enjoyed cooking with everyone in the class. He liked the feeling of everyone being in the class kitchen cooking together rather than when he was at home alone. At times it had felt like a dream, but he would quickly remember that it was all real. Naruto. Naruto jumped at the sound of the feminine voice in his head, and this caused him to fall off the chair he had been sitting in, while waiting for Urza-sensei. A lot of the boys in class began laughing at him as they didn't like him due to him being a pretty boy and gaining the attention of all the girls in the school. The girls, on the other hand, were worried and wanted to see if he was okay, but he simply stood up and said, I'm fine. Sorry about that. He sat back in his seat next to Murayama and Katase, where the two of them sent worried looks at him before Katase asked, Are you sure you're alright, Naruto-kun? Naruto simply smiled at Katase and said, Thank you for worrying, but I'm fine, just lost my balance for a second. Murayama and Katase nodded their heads as Murayama said, Alright, Naruto-kun, so what do you think Urza-sensei will have us make today? Naruto rubbed his chin as he said, I'm not sure, but I might have an idea if today is what I think it is. His answer confused the two as Katase asked, What do you mean, Naruto-kun? Naruto turned to the two and said, Well, I think I remember Urza-sensei saying her birthday was this week, but I couldn't remember what day it was. So, if today is her birthday, then she'll most likely have everyone baking desserts. Murayama and Katase were surprised by this information, as they didn't know Urza-sensei's birthday was this week. Wow, he didn't know that it was Urza-sensei's birthday this week. Yeah, well, she doesn't like to talk about it much when she's here because a lot of the guys here would either try to get her alone for themselves, get her inappropriate gifts, or they'd all gang up on her. Now, while the last is highly unlikely, it is still a possibility. Though personally I think the most likely reason is the second, since the guys here are all wimps, Naruto said, getting Murayama and Katase to giggle since they knew he was right, in that most of the guys were wimps. After that, the three friends just sat comfortably together in their group, waiting for Urza-sensei to arrive and start class. While they waited, Naruto just continued to use his fingers to rub his palm, more specifically, the white sun mark in the center of his hand. That was something else that Naruto had discovered about himself. Naruto had found the mark on his hand after he had woken in the hospital, and when he had tried to search it up, he came up with nothing. Number 3. He had even risked getting chewed out by Sona to ask if she had ever seen the mark. Luckily, Sun didn't berate him for the mark due to him wanting to find out about his past, but unfortunately she hadn't seen it before. While this was saddening for him, Sona had assured him that she would look into the mark and see if she could find anything. This had earned her a hug from Naruto, causing her to heavily blush before she had whacked him on the head. Naruto was broken from his thoughts when he heard the door open along with a shout of, Quiet down, in a commanding voice. Turning to the owner of said voice, Naruto saw it was his homemade teacher who he was slightly embarrassed to admit he had a slight crush on. Her name was Urza Scarlet. She had long red hair that was currently in a ponytail and brown eyes. She was wearing a white, long-sleeved blouse that hugged her figure, showing off her E-cup breasts and thin waist. She was also wearing some black slacks that fit snug against her toned heart-shaped rear and a pair of black heels. Everyone had managed to finally quiet down and were paying attention as Urza spoke. Alright, now today, you all are going to be baking desserts. More specifically, strawberry cheesecakes. Send one person to come and get the recipes from my desk for each group before going back to your tables. As for the rest of you, once your partner comes back, go get the measuring cups, mixing bowls, and all the other equipment needed for today. The equipment needed is listed at the top of the recipe. After that, everyone got their recipes and equipment before they all started to make their cake. Luckily, Naruto was used to cooking with one hand, so he didn't slow down Katase or Murayama, though the three still went at a good pace so as to not make mistakes. As the three were waiting for their cake to finish, Katase and Murayama struck up a conversation with Naruto. So Naruto-kun, we had a question we wanted to ask you. Katase started with Murayama looking at Naruto as well, while they waited for the cake to finish in the oven. Naruto looked at the two with a smile and replied, What's up, Katase-chan? Murayama-chan. Both girls lightly blushed as they were embarrassed about the question they were going to ask. But before they could, the timer went off. Both girls said they'd tell him later before they pulled the cake out of the oven. As the three begin putting the finishing touches, they jump when they suddenly hear the sound of someone shouting. "What the hell is this?" Turning towards the shout, they see Urza-sensei looking towards the perverted trio with an intense and fierce glare. The three deadpanned at the sight before looking at their table to see what might have once been a strawberry cheesecake was now just a lump of charcoal with the frosting they used to create a penis design. Katase and Murayama were disgusted by this, while Naruto felt disappointment as well as disgust. Disappointment in the school for not expelling the three, despite all the perverted acts they perform, and disgust for how far most of the male populace has fallen. It's our CC cake, Urza-sensei?" stuttered Matsuda, due to being very much afraid of Urza-sensei's well-known fury when she gets mad. "This isn't a cake. It's a lump of charcoal, and what the hell is with this vulgar image?" Urza shouted, still beyond pissed that they would try and sell that bullshit lie to her. We thought you would like it," stuttered Matahama, getting disgusted looks from all the girls, including the boys, as well as pissing Urza off even more. "Why on earth would I like something like this?" Urza shouted, getting the three to cower in fear before she then exclaimed, "That is the grade you three are getting as well as detention." The three voiced their opinions that it was unfair since she didn't even try their cake, but then backed off when she glared at them before giving the three detention. As she continued checking everyone's cakes, she gave them all honest grades, which were all B'S to CIs, since while they were good, they all either missed something, like the glaze for the cake, or they were partially burnt. While everyone was slightly disappointed since they figured they could have done better, they were okay with their grade when compared to the perverted trio. As Urza went over to Naruto's group, she spotted their cake and got a glint in her eye as she walked over. She walked over and looked over our cake with an interested gaze before she took the slice that we had prepared and took a bite. Urza moaned in delight as she then said, "This delicious. You three get an A for today, and if you don't mind, I'd like to take this with me." Naruto, Katase, and Murayama all chuckled or giggled as Naruto said, "We don't mind at all, Urza-sensei." Urza smiled as she took the cake and placed it in the fridge, while she dismissed the class as school was now over. She watched over her shoulder as Naruto left while talking and smiling with Katase and Murayama, and smiled as she thought, maybe he is what this world needs to bring back some of its light. Time skip. 1 week later. It had been a week after Naruto had that strange dream, and so far, everything seemed fine. The school was the same with him pranking the male students when they attempted to peep on the girls' kendo club. This even included the perverted trio again after Issei had joined up with them again whenever he wasn't with Yuma. At one point, he had even borrowed one of the kendo club's bakken to beat the perverted trio before attempting to return it, but was instead told to keep it before being asked if he would like to join the kendo club. Naruto had originally refused, saying that it was the girls' kendo club so he wouldn't be allowed until they told him that the club accepted both genders. The only reason they hadn't accepted or extended invitations to any of the male students before was that most of the boys in the school were pervs. When he asked why him, they said it was because they knew he wouldn't ever do something like peep on them, and that it would make it easier to protect them from the pervs, as well as maybe teach him how to fight with a sword using one arm. Naruto had thought about it before he agreed, getting the girls to all cheer. They were going to give him one of the outfits meant for the club until they remembered that they never ordered bigger sizes since they hadn't expected to invite a male. They apologized, but Naruto had simply laughed before saying that he would pack some shorts and a t-shirt whenever he came to the club. With that, his school life had proceeded the same, with the only difference being that none of the males or the perverted trio could peep on the girls, as Naruto had placed sheet metal over the wall, making it impossible for any of the males to peep, while also ensuring that the girls would be able to change clothes in peace. He had also managed to take Karina out on the date they had planned, and the two of them had greatly enjoyed themselves. They had gone to a cafe for breakfast before walking around the shopping district. They had later gone to lunch before heading to a street fair and ending the date with dinner and karaoke, where Naruto surprised her with how well he could sing. As the date came to an end, Naruto had surprised Karina with a necklace that had an angel wing charm. Karina had loved it so much that she had kissed him on the cheek, causing him to blush while she giggled at his expression. All in all, Naruto had had a good week. Currently, it was late at night, and Naruto was walking back to his apartment after training with Katase and Murayama, with his bakken in hand. Lately, when training, he would sometimes begin to feel uncomfortable with the bakken, like it wasn't meant for him or he needed a different weapon. He brought this up with Katase and Murayama, and both had suggested the three of them go to a different dojo to see what he picked. Naruto had smiled at that, as they were willing to go out of their way to make him happy. Meow. Naruto stopped when he heard that, as he began looking around until he felt something brush against his leg. Looking down, he saw that it was a black cat with amber eyes looking at him with curiosity. Naruto smiled as he crouched down, placed his sports bag down, and held out his hand to the cat, getting it to look at him for a second before it began rubbing against his hand, while purring happily. "Well, hello there, where did you come from?" Naruto asked while looking at the cat before looking around as he asked. Do you live in one of these houses? Taking another look at the cat, Naruto saw there was no collar or tags. No tags, guess you must be a stray. Naruto then extended his arm, getting the cat to notice before it climbed up to his shoulder where it sat, and began to rub and lick his cheek. Hey, cut it out, that tickles. The cat stopped and settled down on his shoulder, getting Naruto to smile before he picked up his bag and continued home. Naruto looked at the cat, getting it to look back at him as he said, if you're going to be living with me now, we're going to have to come up with a name for you. Naruto looked down slightly and said, and it'll have to be a girl's name since you are a female. Suddenly, Naruto heard the sound of wind chimes playing, and then he said, I got it! Your name is going to be Kuroka. Obviously, the cat agreed when it began purring and rubbing against his cheek again, getting Naruto to laugh, until he heard a voice. Well, what do we have here? Naruto's eyes went wide as he turned around to see a man with a gray trench coat and a pulled-down fedora standing there with brown hair. Naruto could feel something was wrong and could guess Kuroka felt the same by how she seemed to be tensing on his shoulder, with her tail also standing straight. Who are you? Naruto asked as he really didn't trust this guy and much rather trusted his gut, which told him this guy was bad news. The man ignored Naruto as he smirked and said, A little devil without his master, how curious. Tell me, where is your master? Naruto just looked confused as he asked, What are you talking about, man? And what master? Well, if you don't have a master, then that makes you a stray devil, now doesn't it? Suddenly, the man summoned a blue spear of light, shocking Naruto as he quickly pulled out the wooden katana that he had on him from training. The man then said, And unfortunately, strays must be eliminated. The guy proceeded to throw the spear at him, but Naruto instinctively dodged it, causing the spear to explode when it hit a tree. Naruto was surprised that he was able to dodge it as he had never had training before, so this was a big surprise to him. He got the wooden sword in position as he shouted, What the hell was that? You just threw a spear of light at me. The man frowned when Naruto had dodged the attack and said, Well, this is unexpected. You seem to be able to dodge my attacks, though it won't matter as sooner or later, you will slip up and I will kill you. He made another spear of light and proceeded to go on the attack as he charged Naruto. Naruto blocked the guy's slash with his wooden sword, surprising the man when the wooden sword held up. Unfortunately, Naruto took advantage of the guy's surprise, as he hit him over the head with the bakken with surprising strength, getting the guy to slam into the ground while Naruto backed up, in case the guy decided to attack. Which was a good idea because not a second later, the guy had swung the spear of light where Naruto was standing a second ago. Naruto was panting slightly as he did his best to minimize his movements to make sure that Kuroka didn't fall off his shoulder, which was working so far if her claws still digging into his shoulder were anything to go by. Naruto watched as the guy stood back up, blood dripping down his face from when Naruto smashed him in the back of the head, and from his currently broken nose from hitting the ground. Naruto was watching the guy as he lifted his face to show complete rage and anger which was directed at Naruto. The guy then charged at Naruto a lot faster than before, slammed his spear of light into Naruto's bakken, and kept applying more and more strength, pushing Naruto to his knees. I was originally just going to give a quick death, but now because of your resistance, I'm going to make you suffer, the guy said while adding more pressure. First, I'm going to break every bone in your body. Then you'll watch as I rape all the girls you know while they try and reach out for you, calling for you to help while you're unable to. I'll make you watch as I torture every one of them, slowly and painfully until they finally beg for death. Finally, once they are all dead, then, and only then, will I grant you the mercy that is known as death. Naruto's eyes went wide and snapped into focus at this as Katas, Murayama and Karina flashed in his mind. Gritting his teeth, Naruto suddenly felt a massive surge of strength and energy well up inside of himself as he began to push back against the man, shocking the fallen angel. Naruto slowly stood up before, with a loud shout, shoved him away with tremendous force, launching the fallen angel into a nearby wall. Naruto was glaring at the fallen angel, and was so focused on him, that he completely ignored the additional presence he felt in the area. Rias, point of view. Rias had no idea what to expect from her latest peerage member, but she had decided to take up Sona's advice and look for someone based on their character. Naruto's personality was such a breath of fresh air that she couldn't have been happier with choosing him for her peerage. On top of that, he was already pretty strong when she reincarnated him, so his enhanced strength would be even greater. She knew that she couldn't watch him all day since that would arouse suspicion if she was found watching a student a year younger than her. So it was a good thing she had Kaneko watch him since she was his junior. Plus, it wouldn't be strange to find her watching him, as it could be made to believe that she looking up to him as a role model. However, when she received an alert from Kaneko about Naruto being attacked by a fallen angel, she had decided now was the time to intervene. When she had arrived, Rias had somewhat expected Naruto to be near death's door, or at least barely holding his own against the fallen angel. What she had not expected to see was a body being flung into a wall with enough force to crater the wall. Upon closer inspection, she saw that it was the fallen angel who had been flung into the wall. Rias would have thought about it more, but she was broken from her thoughts when she felt a burst of energy. Looking towards the source, Rias was shocked to see that it was, in fact, coming from Naruto, more specifically, his glowing white bakken. Back with Naruto. Naruto didn't know where this energy was coming from, but he knew that with it he could achieve victory. Naruto charged at the man before he suddenly had an image and a name appear in his head. Naruto focused the energy he felt from his center, down his arm, and to the bakken in his hand where a white bubble began to surround the weapon. Unfortunately, Naruto's anger was slightly clouding his focus to the point that his energy was beginning to overcharge his attack, as seen by it turning from white to slightly green. Naruto kept charging the man in the wall who was just barely getting to his feet. Naruto ignored the fact that his bakken was beginning to crack. He ignored the fact that Kuroka had jumped off his shoulder. He ignored everything around him. All that mattered to Naruto at this moment was defeating the man that was in front of him. Naruto continued to charge until he was within reach and swung his charged bakken, just as the man looked up at him with wide, fear-filled eyes. As Naruto swung, the name that had appeared in his mind popped up once again, and he shouted it out with his voice now booming throughout the area. Halberd Rakshasa. The bakken slammed right into the man's head as Naruto had performed a downward swing onto the man's head, slamming him down once upon, but this time an explosion rang out as the air cracked before the entire city of Quo began experiencing a massive earthquake. The shockwaves alone were throwing off Rias's balance from the sudden and huge burst of power that was shifting the ground in the air. Once the shockwaves calmed down, Rias began to slowly float down as the smoke cleared. Once she had landed, the smoke was mostly gone, and she could finally see just what exactly Naruto's attack caused. There were cracks everywhere, all along the street, walls, even the windows of the nearby buildings were shattered. Rias was shocked by all the damage that was done from Naruto's attack, and from the looks of it, his newly awakened powers. The redhead could only wonder, was this some type of forgotten sacred gear, or something? If it was the former, then it was definitely a powerful one, strong enough to match the Longinus-class sacred gears, if not surpass. Suddenly heard a snap under her foot, and looked down to see it was a piece of wood. She crouched down to pick it up, and examine it until she realized it was part of a bakken. She was broken from her thought as she heard someone breathing, and looked to the source to see Naruto standing there. Eyes shadowed, shirt blown off, face turned towards the sky, and his right arm looked to be turning purple, showing that it had been completely broken. Rias was surprised to see Naruto still clutching the bakken despite his arm being completely shattered, but she saw that it was only the handle which was still in one piece. Naya. Rias blinked as she realized she was staring before she looked down to see a black cat with hazel gold eyes continuously rubbing itself against Naruto's leg, in worry. Rias frowned in sadness as the cat was very worried about the Uzumaki before Rias realized that Naruto wasn't responding. Suddenly, Rias herself began to feel very worried at Naruto's lack of response, and began to move towards him. Once she reached him, she gingerly touched his shoulder until she heard several soft thumps. Turning around, she saw the rest of her peerage as well as her best friend, Sauna Shitori. Or, as she is actually called, Sona Citri, heiress to the Citri clan and fellow territory owner alongside herself. Sona. What the hell happened here? Rias was cut off when Sona very uncharacteristically shouted and cursed loudly. Everyone would have been shocked if not for the fact that they were standing in a giant crater with Naruto at the center of it. They were all shocked to see such an incredible amount of damage, but Sona was also pissed because this would need to be reported to her sister and Rias's brother, along with having to deal with erasing everyone's memories of the event and fixing all the damage before morning. Sona, calm down, Rias calmly said, trying to placate her best friend. Calm down, Sona shouted. Do you have any idea how much work I have to do now? How many people's memories I'll have to rewrite? On top of all that, I have to fix the area and report this to both my sister and your brother. So again, explain to me why I should calm down. Rias sighed as she understood where Sona was coming from. However, this time, she wasn't going to let Sona do it alone. Look, I know this is a lot of damage, but there is a reason for it. Rias began before she began telling Sona about reincarnating Naruto as her new York. She explained how Kaneko had alerted her to Naruto being attacked by a fallen angel, and that when she had arrived it was to see the fallen angel get thrown into a wall before Naruto charged and slammed his powered-up bakken right onto the fallen's head. Everyone was shocked to hear that Naruto had caused all the damage, and was still thinking about it until someone spoke. Is he okay? Akeno asked as she noticed Naruto was still standing in the same spot. Everyone looked over and saw that Naruto hadn't moved an inch with the cat still rubbing against his leg. This was now beginning to get very worrying, so they had moved a little closer before they stopped as they didn't know what to do. However, Rias had decided that he was her Uruk, so she should check on him, and with that, Rias walked back over to Naruto. Everyone was on guard as Rias moved closer to Naruto, cautious of what the Uzumaki will do. After what felt like an hour to everyone, which in reality was not even a minute, Rias stood beside Naruto. She gingerly grabbed Naruto's shoulder before lightly shaking him as she asked, Naruto, are you alright? However, instead of answering, Naruto instead began to fall forward as he finally let go of the broken bakken handle. This shocked everyone as Rias caught him before he fell and gently placed Naruto on the ground with everyone rushing over. It was only now that Naruto was laying down that they could all see that he was unconscious, shocking them even further. He was unconscious this whole time, asked a wide-eyed Sona, as she and everyone else was shocked. Well, Rias started, gaining everyone's attention as she had placed Naruto head on her lap. It makes sense, seeing as it looks like he unleashed his power for the first time. Whatever it is. Everyone agreed as they looked around, realizing that it made sense due to his lack of control. He wasn't able to contain this tremendous power inside of him. They didn't know what adventures lie ahead of them, but they knew for a fact that with Naruto, everything would change. Hello everyone! So, I've had this story in the works for a while, but it's taken me so long to put out, because of my other stories, school, and work. However, I have finally managed to finish it, and hope you all will enjoy it. Now, I also know that all of you will ask me about my other stories, and for updates, and I want to let you all know right now that I always try my best to get the chapters finished and updated for all of you. However, I don't always have time to work solely on my stories, so I ask that all of you understand and are patient with me when I start school and work again. See you all next time, and don't forget to favorite, follow, and review.
Thank you so much for watching What If Naruto, a cast member of Rias Peerage and 8 Devil Fruit Part 1. I hope you complete our goal, which is 100 views. This is the end. We will meet in next story. Peace.